Are you tired of being told that you should take up more space or be more outspoken as a leader? Karolien Koolhof was too. And she didn't just find a different path, she's dedicated her life to helping other leaders find it too. Welcome to the Powerful Introvert Podcast. I'm Greg Weinger. I'm here today with Karolien. She's a certified coach, a trainer, and author of the book Introverted Leadership, which explores what introversion really is, how cultural views shape our views of leadership in different countries, and the deeply ingrained biases against introverted leaders. This is based on interviews with introverted leaders around the world, and she explains how quiet leaders everywhere can shine. Through her company, Quiet Quality, Karolien helps introverts navigate their real-world leadership challenges, from managing teams to finding their voice in organizations that still reward extroversion, which is pretty much everywhere, right, Karolien?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, really good to have you. A lot of times we start with the introvert origin story. We were all introverts from the start, but we had different childhood experiences. Could you tell us a little bit about what your childhood experiences were like as an introvert?
Yes, for sure. Oh, I was a very quiet kid. I really liked being inside, reading books, just being by myself. And well, when I went to school, it was basically, I preferred to be with not like a big group, but just one-on-one with other people. But at least here in the Netherlands, but I think around the world, I was in a big classroom, so that could be quite overwhelming sometimes. And actually, that made me somehow, I don't know, close off from the environment and really, yeah, I started living in my own world, which was basically, well, books and just a few friends that I had because, well, it could be quite overwhelming now and then being in such large classrooms. And also, my professors actually saw that. The teachers saw that because they wrote on like yearly reports that I got, like, yeah, maybe she's just a little bit shy, or maybe she doesn't dare to like speak up or take space. And when I first read that, I really felt like, okay, what do they even mean with all of this? Because for me, it was just like normal, right? I never even considered that it could be different for other people. It was only later on because of these remarks that I discovered like, okay, so apparently this is considered as something that's odd, which maybe makes me different from others. And yeah, and that is the beginning of something that I kept on hearing also when I started working. It came back several times.
So, just in terms of what you've learned since, I think you wouldn't have had that perspective then.
When what?
Do you think it was easier or harder relative to other places growing up in the Netherlands, being more quiet or more shy?
I think not just the Netherlands, but also the fact that I grew up in a small village. So it was not that crowded. I can imagine that if I would have grown up in like one of the bigger cities, that it would have been even more overwhelming to me. But in this quiet village where I grew up, there is the possibility to just go somewhere and be alone. So I think that was all right, but there was always the expectation of taking up space, of profiling yourself, of showing what you've got. And I think, yeah, it's the Netherlands, so it's not as outspoken as in the US because we are a Calvinistic country. So there is some kind of norm, like don't show up too much, don't brag about yourself, because then it is also considered as something that's not done. So it is like a fine line between not being too modest and not taking up too much space. It's always this search for like, okay, am I doing it enough? And am I doing it not too much? It's a fine line, really.
Interesting. So it sounds like the overall bias is still Western. There's a support or encouragement of being more outgoing, more interested. But
Yes.
but the set point is maybe there are some of these tendencies that rein that in a little bit.
Red and white? Yeah, true. Yeah, I think it is largely influenced by the US norm of, yes, showing off your success, right? The individualism of, okay, look at me, look at what I have achieved in my life. And then, yeah, being proud of that, which is good in one sense, but I think in the other, it can be quite challenging too, especially for
Right.
introverted people, right?
That's right. It's not the natural fit for all personality types.
Well, it isn't.
So you had this awareness developed in school, like a lot of us, and then you went off into your career and then you started in journalism. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a writer. I even wrote like little poems on the walls of my room. My mother wasn't too happy about that at the time, but later on she understood that was just preparation for my career later on. And so I studied languages and ended up first in regional journalism. And then later I worked for one of the bigger national newspapers in the Netherlands. And that too was quite an extroverted environment, so to say, because there, yeah, it's really about who has like the newest scoop and who will write the article for the front page tomorrow. So it's really about, yeah, getting that position, but we call it like elbowing your way forward. Yeah, showing yourself, showing that your story is better than the story that others want to bring for that same newspaper, even online, because online it's also about speed, right? So who is first? And I was there just being my introverted self, taking, I think, a little bit more time to overthink all kinds of things. Even before I started writing, I always wanted to dive deep into a subject, and then I would come up with questions and then call someone. Whereas there are a lot of other journalists out there who just pick up the phone straight away and start talking with other people before even exploring the subject. So that was already quite a different preference. And I also like taking up bigger projects, innovating journalism. I made like a tool for the election time where people could inform themselves on all of the different parties to see what their preference was. So that was a way for me to really contribute also to, yeah, the public opinion and informing people about what's going on. And even while doing all of that, because to me it felt like pretty much profiling myself, right? Innovating stuff and coming up with topics that no one ever thought of, or even going deeper with certain subjects. They kept on telling me, like, yes, you need to be more out there. You need to be more outspoken. Show yourself. So I really couldn't understand that. I was like,
Mhm.
why are you saying all of that? Because I feel like I'm contributing a lot, especially in the innovation. But still, it wasn't seen some way, like in the way they wanted it to be. So there again, I kind of felt misunderstood, just like I felt in kindergarten already.
Oh, so you were leaning on your introvert strengths and doing innovative things, creative
Uh-huh.
things in your
Yes.
own style, in your own way.
Yes.
And sounds like it was not being recognized.
Not well, not enough, at least. Of course, they saw what I was doing. But I
Right.
was not like bragging about it or whatever. I was just doing my job. Well, that's how it felt to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also fairly successfully. And then, so what led you to a decision to move away from that?
I'm also, as a person, the kind of person that likes to look forward. So I was always thinking, like, okay, what is the next step that I want to take? And I really like this innovation part. So I asked, is it possible for me to do more with innovation? Because I'm really liking this project that I got here. But there was not so much space in order to do that. But I really wanted to innovate journalism because, well, it is an industry that is struggling because of all of the new technologies that are arising. So I thought, maybe if I become like a leader, then I can influence all of that. So I subscribed myself to an MBA program because I felt that was the way to go in order to take that step forward. But the funny thing about that whole program is that I really discovered a lot more about myself, about my introverted side. I already knew about the word introversion before, but not as much as I learned through that MBA program. I really had a deep dive into my own personality and discovered, like, hey, this is why I prefer to recharge on my own. If it's not something bad or whatever. Even decided to do research in this topic of introversion and leadership. Decided to write a book about it as well. I wanted to be a writer as a kid already, so there was still a dream that was out there. So I made that dream come true. And there was also kind of the turning point where I decided, hey, I no longer want to write about people. I want to speak with them and I want to help them. Yeah, and embrace this strength that is actually linked to introversion. Yeah, just the
Yeah.
way that I discovered that through that whole program. And it really incited something inside of me, like this fire that I wanted to spread to other people.
Yeah. And what was it in there? Was it some of the material you were coming across that informed you about it?
Yeah, I remember at first we did some kind of personality test. It also spoke about introversion and extroversion. And then I also had like a very good discussion with one of my classmates. And he recommended the book Quiet by Susan Cain to me. So I started reading that. After it, yes, exactly. It's a classic, right?
Right.
And that, yeah, all of the pieces of the puzzle just came together reading that. And it made me curious to know more about it and to do something with that.
That's fantastic. You're the first person I've talked to who came to that discovery in a program where you could immediately apply it in research and learning.
Yeah, yeah, it was great that I could then link that to leadership because the program was heavily also focused on leadership. And I was really curious to know, like, are there even introverted leaders out there? Because to me, it seemed like it was something that was frowned upon or something that was not accepted as a leader. And I really was motivated in order to prove them wrong. Like, there is nothing wrong with introversion. It's just different. It's not good or bad. It's just different from the way other people do it. That's it.
So you went and talked to a bunch of introverted leaders. How many people did you speak to, and what types of things did you take away from those?
Yeah, so it's several things. There was an online questionnaire which I shared worldwide through all kinds of ways, like on social media and by email and all of that. So there was like a questionnaire that about 400 self-proclaimed introverts worldwide answered. And then I spoke to another 30 in person, like deep dive interviews that also became part of the book to really give examples of, okay, what does it actually look like to be an introverted leader?
And you also took a little bit of a cross-cultural perspective too. Did you do that in that research, or was that later?
Yes, I did that in that research because after reading Susan Cain's work, I really had the idea that that was written from a more Western perspective. And I was really missing the Asian perspective or the one from Africa. So already with the questionnaire, I had people from all over the world and also interviewing those people one-on-one. I made sure that I spoke to people from every continent out there in order to see the differences between introverts worldwide and the way it is considered worldwide.
So maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Yes, for
Start with
sure.
some of the similarities first. What is really most common across the cultures?
Well, most common is that a lot of introverts encounter what we call affinity bias. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you are in an environment, for example, if you work in a company where the top management or the top layer is mainly extroverted, then the people in this top layer will probably project their own personality onto you because we prefer to surround ourselves with people who are just like us, right? It feels safe because you know how they will respond, how they will react. So it's only natural for people to look for people just like themselves. But this comes with a very big downside because if, as an introvert, you work in a more extroverted dominated environment, then it becomes even harder to get to that top layer because they will look at you through their more extroverted pair of glasses, right? And they will consider you not suited for leadership positions. So that is something that almost 80% of the people I interviewed told me they encountered in some form or the other. Yeah, so that was kind of shocking that it was so strong.
Yeah. been my experience as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems very natural. And I think that's a point of departure for a lot of DEI initiatives.
Okay.
It's not necessarily rooted in some kind of racism or sexism. There's just this affinity where
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to feel more comfortable. And then it kind of ends up perpetuating these other biases. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a really important point. Also, that it pertains to personality types, neurodivergence, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah, and I still run into that like almost every week with the people that I coach, with people having bosses and telling them like, yeah, you're not suited for this position, or we need to change this way or that way in order to be capable. So the indirect message underneath all of that is you're not good the way you are, which is quite a harsh message, I would say.
Absolutely. Were there any other findings about the similarities that were surprising?
Well, I also asked them for a definition because there are all kinds of definitions out there. And the funny thing is that while like official definitions define introverts sometimes as maybe in a more negative way, like being closed off or not daring to do stuff, but those introverts that I interviewed through the questionnaire, they all, yeah, framed it in a way more positive way. Like it's just linked to the way that I recharge. And it means that sometimes I like being alone, but it doesn't mean that I don't like other people. And I just need a little bit more time in order to think about things and then express my thoughts and feelings than more extroverted people. But there's no good or bad in that. So it really gave me the chance to create a new definition that is more neutral than the ones that were already out there.
So you composed your definition on the basis in part of the research that you had done. What
Yes.
would you say your definition at this point in your life is?
Yeah. So an introvert is someone who recharges by being alone now and then. That does not mean that an introvert doesn't want to be with other people, but if an introvert does that, then preferably in smaller groups or one-on-one, and an introvert prefers to take a little bit more time to think and to process first before speaking, whereas extroverts prefer speaking and thinking at the same time. So that's way more
Right.
neutral, right? There's no judgment in that whatsoever.
Right. And I know in certain frameworks like the Big Five personality assessment, introversion is like it isn't even defined. It's defined by the lack of introversion. So
Mhm.
introversion is the positive characteristic. And that's like defining women as the lack of male characteristics. It's
That's crazy.
pretty
Yeah.
harsh of a worldview.
Mhm. True.
But I want to come back to the cultural differences. And so maybe the differences that you discovered. What are some of those?
Well, one of the main insights that I got is that there are big differences between the continents. So if you look at Northern America, but then also Western Europe, those tend to be the most extroverted parts of the world. That is where individualism is very important because in the literature, introversion is linked to individualism, so showing your success and all of that. Whereas if you look at continents like Africa, certain countries in Africa, but also certain countries in Asia, they tend to be more introvert friendly because there it's more about collectivism. It's about doing it together, being part of a whole, not just taking up space for the sake of taking up space. So it's a different way of doing things. Yeah. So for an introvert, it can be easier if you are in those parts of the world working there or living there because the expectations are just different.
Right. Were there particular countries in Asia, for example, that stood out in that way, or maybe stood out as the exception in Asia?
Not necessarily that's all, no. I think if I remember correctly, the countries like Japan, it was slightly different, but the difference was not like that significant in order to dimension all of that.
Yeah. And I've spoken to people all over, including in Singapore. I spoke to somebody who was very comfortable growing up in Singapore and then relocated to Australia, where
Really?
they encountered this shift, but actually took some of that strength with him. So he felt comfortable speaking out about his introversion,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It certainly confronted a very different environment there.
Can imagine, yes. Yes, because Australia and New Zealand are way more the western part of the world, so to say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, to follow your career from there, did you go right into coaching at that point? Where'd you go after your MBA?
Yeah, so first I had an intermediary year where I did some consultancy. That was through a connection of this MBA program. But I ended up just making PowerPoint slides, so that was not challenging enough for me. It was still not the opportunity in order to really make a change. So during that year, I made a plan in order to create my own company because that was also something that I learned through the MBA. I knew how to do it and I knew how to create like a whole strategy and make it happen doing all of that. And so, yeah, during that year, I prepared for and subscribed to a first coaching training and it took off, but it was just before COVID hit. So it was like the worst timing ever in order to start a company because, yeah, I had like two pillars that I had thought of. Like I wanted to coach one-on-one and I wanted to do workshops for groups. But then all of a sudden, while everything was closed down, I could not meet with people in person and I could not be with large groups. So that was kind of challenging. But I really used that time in order to invest in everything that is still the basis of what I'm doing. So finishing the research, finishing the book, also making the first version of the online academy that my clients get when they do a trajectory with me. So yeah, but it actually happened to be quite a creative period for me. And even looking back, because nowadays I'm like almost full time in coaching, in training. I don't even have that much time anymore in order to develop all of that. I wish I could do it just as much as in that period. So it was really a good way of really creating the fundamentals of what I'm still using in my business right now.
Yeah, it sounds like in retrospect, that was a gift to
That
have
helped.
that time.
Yes. Even it was a challenging time as well, but yeah, I made the most of it investing in my company.
That's great. And then is your practice mostly online or in person?
No, mostly in person, although I must say it was, yeah, because I started in COVID time and I also did a lot of online coaching. Still sometimes do that if people live a little bit further away or even abroad. That is an option, but most people now prefer to meet in person if that is possible. So I work throughout all of the Netherlands, from the south, Eindhoven to Amsterdam, all larger cities. I have a space where I can coach people.
That's great. And you're working with pretty large Dutch corporations there.
Yes. Yeah, there are some banks, some insurance companies, municipalities as well. Yeah, it's great that such a topic that I thought was like a niche topic seems to be something that really speaks to people and that I can help them with. That feels really
Yeah,
rewarding still every day doing that.
that's really great. And it sounds like some of your techniques or your approaches probably lend themselves a little bit better to in-person work. Could you talk a little bit about your approach to coaching?
Yes, I have different techniques, but all of it is evidence based, so based on actual science. I'm also a third years in psychology, so that's also helping me deepen my knowledge about all of that. But I usually always start with insight, so it can be like a big five questionnaire, or if it's career coaching, then there's the core talents assessment that looks at what you like doing when you were a little kid. It's about the play that you actually showed when you were a kid, kind of playing behavior. So that's also an interesting one to do. And then after getting all of that insight, also look at limiting beliefs because insight is all very nice and well, but if you're not doing anything with it, then how's it going to help for you? So that's always part two, phase two, which can be even more challenging because then that's really looking at yourself in the mirror. Okay, what is it that I'm telling myself that might be blocking me from taking that step forward or from accepting myself as I am? Yeah. So those are the two main parts in what I do. And yeah, sometimes it goes even a little bit deeper if there's something that happened when they were younger and that created some kind of pattern that might be blocking them. I can work with that too through some psychotherapy, helping to put like another perspective next to the ones that they already have. That can sometimes help, but it really, yeah, differs from one person to the other what I actually use in order to help people.
What are the most common limiting beliefs that you encounter with your clients?
I'm not good the way I am, or I'm different. People should like me. I
Hmm.
should do everything perfectly. Also, one that I see a lot. And yeah, I think those are the main ones. But I think that the deepest one and also the most harming one is the I'm not good the way I am one, right?
Hmm.
Because it touches like the whole core of a person.
And is that very individual, or is there a commonality to how you treat that I'm not good enough the way I am belief?
Yeah, I think it is a belief that a lot of people actually, I think I hardly run into someone who doesn't have that belief in some
Hmm.
way because it's so easy nowadays to compare yourself with others, right? Even looking on social media, you see people doing all these nice things. You think, okay, why am I not doing that? Or why is that person getting promoted and I'm not? So it's very easy to yeah, to see something that's lacking out there that might make you like not good as you are. And then I think it is also linked to this neurodiversity because if you are neurodivergent, if you are an introvert or someone else who's considered neurodivergent, it makes you feel a little bit different. For introverts, it's still quite a large group out there. But because as introverts, we're not speaking up that much, it might look like you're the only introvert out there. And that can really have an influence on the way moving forward. Because if already at a young age you feel like, hey, I'm different and I'm maybe strange or some kind of alien out here, that really does something with your self image. And that can then create a pattern that will follow you around the rest of your life and saying to you every day, like, I'm not good the way I am. I should adapt. I should change. I should start pleasing or I should prove that I'm worthy. So I should work even harder. All these kinds of patterns are often linked to that.
That's right. So, how does the work that you do help surface that for people and look at that and then perhaps to break that pattern?
Well, we start by making it visual. I use an exercise that's called the bus. And so all of these beliefs, they become passengers on a visual bus where they fill in like, okay, where does the perfectionist go? Where does the inner critic go? Where does the pleaser go? And then we pick the one who is like the hardest, like the toughest one out there. And we work with that in the session. We give that person a chair in the room and I start talking to that person, to that perfectionist, or to that inner critic. Okay, how come you are in front? Like, how come you are behind the steering wheel of the bus? What happened there? And what would happen if we would change your position or moving you a little bit more towards the back of the bus? And what could we then put next to it in order to get some more balance, right? Because oftentimes what's lacking there is like a feeling of pride, a feeling of, yeah, being good enough, right? Acceptance. So oftentimes because that's all always around too, we also work with the thing that could be put next to it. And that really helps to balance it a little bit more. And then people get that insight doing that live in the room, like, okay, yes, this really is a different perspective, and I never thought about it this way. So that's one thing. And then after that, I always like to look at core values. Like, okay, what is my inner compass? What is it that I find important that can really tell me how I want to live this life? And then the other side of it is, okay, what is actually blocking me from doing that? So the blockers, the obstacles, we also make that visible. And then we link that to the behavior linked to it. So, okay, what does your behavior look like if you follow all of these obstacles? And what does it look like if you follow your core values? If you start living what is important to you. And then also by making it's like a scheme that we just writing down the values and then the behavior and the obstacles on the behavior. When people discover like, okay, so I can actually influence all of that. I can stop avoiding my values. And by taking small steps, because the obstacles are there in order to help you deal with discomfort. So it asks of you to deal with a little bit of discomfort if you want to live your values. But by doing it in small steps, it is doable to create new things because that is what we're talking about. And so I always try and break that down into smaller steps. And if, okay, what is one core value that you want to dedicate some more time and attention to in the coming weeks, the coming months, the coming year? Where do you want to be in the year? Okay. And if you want to be there, what does that mean in terms of smaller steps? So we really break it down into small steps, and then people start actually living that and actually experiencing like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought, and it's really making a change for me. Yeah.
There's a lot of great stuff in there. I love the visualization. It seems very helpful to give you some distance on the feelings and look at them a little bit more objectively and
Yeah.
potentially with a little bit more care.
Definitely, yeah. And it works wonders because people really get that insight themselves. And then always when I ask them, like at the end of a trajectory, like, what is it that stood out most to you? They always tell me that bus exercise. And then also the little schedule that we made, me like, okay, how can I actually live those values? Yeah. It's something I think they will remember forever because it's a different exercise. It can be challenging for people because they need to play their own inner critic, which can be fun, but sometimes quite challenging too.
You don't often like to hear what they have to say, but they're always talking.
Some people, they even, I don't know, they get mad because of that or start crying because of it. Yeah, it can really lead to the strong responses doing that.
Yeah. And I like how you're focused on the values too, because that's something I did with some of my personal work. It really motivates you in a different way when you are choosing your values and seeing how they might differ from what's in the environment, then it does become a lot more motivating.
Definitely, yes. Yes, it does. Yeah, and it can help you like throughout your life, making the choices that actually suit you. And that really links very well to my way of working, of getting people to actually be themselves and start from within instead of start from the outside.
That's great. And then just for somebody listening, what might be an example of a practical exercise that they could do to start looking into some of these things?
Yeah, I think that the one I just described, just think of something that is very important to you that you feel you are not putting enough time and attention to, like one little value. And then just think of something small that you could do in the coming week in order to do that. For example, if health is a core value, that maybe going for a walk each day could be a step. And then you could think of, okay, how can I help myself doing that? So maybe it would be putting your shoes somewhere where you can see them, for asking a friend to come with you so that you make sure that you actually go for a walk. So it's these little nudging things that can really help to think of how can I make this a reality? Because planning is one thing, but doing it is always second. So really think of, okay, what kind of nudges can I create for myself in order to make it easier?
And to what extent can accountability help there? I mean, you have that in the coaching relationship, but let's say you don't have one of those. How might you create some of that for yourself?
And yeah, so that's also where a friend or like a family member or your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, or husband, all of that can come in, right? If you tell them like, hey, I want to go for a walk every day from now on, can you help me with that? That can also be something. Or maybe create like some kind of ticking box where you can see your own streak. That can also be very rewarding because rewards, they're also proven to help people continue with these kind of things. You have all kinds of apps where if you lose your streak, well, that doesn't feel nice, right? So trying to, create some kind of walking streak, maybe on paper, maybe using an app. It can also be something to hold yourself accountable for it.
Nice. It seems like you're doing really great work here and you're finishing up a psychology degree.
Random.
What do you think might be in the future for you? Do you have a direction in mind for your coaching practice or to just do more of the same?
Well, I'm very interested in the topic of neurodiversity in the whole breadth of it. So not just introversion. I also coach giftedness. I'm already helping people who have ADHD, sometimes autism, so really becoming even broader in terms of approach, helping all of those people accept that they are good the way they are, using the strength of it, because all of these things have their own strengths, but also dealing with the challenges that might come with it. Yeah, that it would really be my end goal in order to get every person accept him or herself for themselves. That, yeah, just having the feeling like I belong and good the way I am. Yeah, if I
So,
can, yeah, get there, then that would be the end of my work, but I'm afraid there's no end point to that.
yeah, that's a beautiful message. It's something I really support as well to help people feel more understood and really all of us. And along those lines, is there such a thing as neurotypical?
Very good question. Yeah, I spoke to a neuropsychology professor the other day because I was interviewing him for a new book. And he told me like every brain is wired differently. Even with identical twins, they did research. Their brains are different. So it's a very good question if neurotypical and normal even exist. I don't think it does. So I think it's good that we start from that diversity perspective and not just see it as something additional that is needed for part of the people out there, but I think it's needed for everyone in order to be seen and yeah, to work in a way that suits them.
Right. Karolien, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where should they go?
Yeah, so on my website, quietquality.nl, I have a weekly blog that they can follow. Otherwise, also on LinkedIn, there's plenty of information. There's a Dutch podcast. There's some English podcasts out there as well. And then, of course, there's the book Introverted Leadership that people can buy on Amazon if they want.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom. You are doing amazing work. I wish I could move to the Netherlands and and
Well,
spend some time
more
with
than
you.
welcome.
Um, but really, yeah, pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you. And yeah, really hope that by doing this together, we get even more awareness for this very important topic. So thank you so much for addressing this and for all your great work that you already did.
Thank you. Absolutely.